Okay, so what's before you is 5 examples of AR-15 bolt carrier groups. And the purpose of this video is to kind of give you guys a visual comparison of the differences out there in your standard bolt carrier groups. You know, a lot of people have told me that there's nothing different between them all, and they're all mil-spec'd and it doesn't really matter. But that's really not the case. I mean, there is quite a bit of difference between what you're getting in your different brand name rifles. And so what I've got here is I'm representing 3 different companies. We've got Smith & Wesson, the M&P 15 bolt carrier group. We have a newer Bushmaster bolt carrier group. This one is new as of February 2011, this month. We have a Stag Arms bolt carrier group, and we have 2 older examples of Bushmaster bolt carrier groups as well. So before I begin, let me just tell you that I'm not an expert on this stuff, and this is really just me regurgitating some of the stuff that I've learned and some of the stuff that I've heard. So take it as it's intended, and that is to give you really a visual reference of the difference between some differences between these bolts, and just a couple ideas to maybe help spur you in your thinking. And it's kind of treated as like almost like just a primer to your buying research. So when you go to buy an AR-15, you'll have a little bit of a place to start in your research. So, okay, so let's go ahead and start off with some of the details, some of the differences between them. Now I've got them in order of preference. So I do prefer the Smith & Wesson bolt carrier groups. The newer Bushmaster as they've really done a much better job in their recent bolt carrier groups, and then Stag Arms, and then the older Bushmasters. So let me show you the difference. When I first started looking into buying an AR-15, I started doing a lot more research into the differences between the rifles and the manufacturers out there. And one of the biggest differences was in their manufacturing process of their bolt carrier groups. And Smith & Wesson really impressed me in that they take a lot of attention to detail, and they really do a good job in their manufacturing process. So one of the things that you want to look for, one of the aspects is castle, or your gas key staking. Okay, so you want to see if you've got a proper staked gas key. And if you can look up here, you can see that they've got these little divots that are kind of punched in towards the screws in the middle. That is called staking, and what the purpose of that is to keep those screws from coming out of the gas key. The gas key consists of the tube right here, and then this chunk of metal back in here, which helps anchor it to the bolt carrier group. But you can see that they are properly staked, and why this is important is you cannot Loctite these screws, because Loctite is degraded by heat, and this area receives a lot of hot gases from the gas tube that exits the barrel and comes back to work the action, and so this area really heats up a lot, and Loctite would be degraded, and it'd be pretty much become useless. Here is another example. This is the newer Bushmaster bolt carrier group, and you can see that the staking is a little less aggressive on the Bushmaster. Okay, but still adequate. There's a different example of staking here with the Stag Arms bolt carrier group. And you can see that is sufficient as well. It's actually done really well. It's just different. They punch it more than they stake the sides. So that's another example. Let me show you. And this is another Bushmaster bolt. This is an older bolt, and you can see that the staking is a bit less aggressive even yet. So. And then finally, I want to show you an example of what I would call insufficient staking. Okay, and this is an example of an older Bushmaster bolt carrier that is not staked properly. you can see that the stakes do not match up with the stakes on the actual screw heads themselves, and so there is a propensity for those to slip a bit. So that's improper staking. It's not aggressive enough to really be effective. So that is something to look for. You know, a lot of the major companies like Noveski, LMT, Colt, they will do proper staking. So same with you know, Bushmaster's doing a better job with it. But you want to look at companies. Google their bolt carrier groups before you buy them. That's one of the things you need to look for. Okay, another thing that I was concerned with when I went to purchase my first AR-15 was the construction of the rear of the bolt carrier group. And you can see that you can see on the top of this there's this much metal, and then underneath they've milled out a bit and they've taken off about half of that mass underneath. This is what we call a AR-15 enhanced bolt. Alright, so there's half the mass underneath than there is on top. And this is actually much more preferred over, well, let me show you. This is much more preferred over this style, where all they have is a small section of the bolt carrier underneath. Now I've seen it where they've actually taken this entire piece off here and it's just the semicircle all the way back. That's even less preferred. But this is what we consider just an AR-15 bolt carrier. Okay. Now the full M16, this is actually the newer Bushmaster, so this is also the newer Bushmaster bolt, and it's an AR-15 enhanced one as well. The full M16 or full auto bolt will have the same amount of mass on top as it does underneath. Okay, and what that does, why that's important, is because it will kind of balance the bolt out a bit. And the same with the Stag Arms. You can see that it's an AR-15 one as well. The added mass to the rear of the bolt will stabilize the bolt a bit more, make it a bit more balanced, but it also adds meat or heft or mass to the bolt carrier group. So when the round is fired in the chamber, the bolt will actually stay in place longer because it's heavier than it would otherwise. So these bolts will actually go into these ones that are typical AR-15 bolts will actually go into the extraction phase a lot faster than one of these heavier bolts. And why that makes a difference is it doesn't allow for as much pressures to be built up inside the chamber and inside the barrel, and so it doesn't aid in as powerful of an extraction process. So the added weight will lend itself to a bit more reliability in the extraction phase of the bolt's travel. So it also will slow the bolt down, so it's not being shot back as violently into extraction phase and pushed forward as violently into the rechambering phase. And so it is actually going to cause less wear and tear on the internals of the gun because it slows that bolt down just a bit. Okay, so that's why I prefer having more mass on the back of the bolt. And you can see that these two have it, and these three over here are more AR-15 style. I wish I had a full auto bolt to show you the difference, the M16 bolt, but you can Google a picture of that to see what it looks like. Okay, so that's one of the more minor aspects to it. Staking is important because it adds to longevity, and I think that the more mass you put on a bolt, the more original designed it was, the more it's going to add to less friction and wear on your internal components. Okay? Alright, so let's talk about another key aspect to the bolt carrier group, and that is the firing pin housing. Okay, so let me show you the difference. Here's three examples of completely shrouded firing pins. Okay, so this is the Stag Arms, Bushmaster, and we have the Smith & Wesson there. Okay, these are all fully shrouded hammers or fully shrouded firing pins. Okay. Now, if you look at the Bushmaster, the older Bushmaster firing pins, they are open. Okay, they're exposed, and why that becomes a big issue. Okay, and this is probably one of the biggest issues I have with older Bushmasters is this exposed firing pin, and let me tell you why. So when the hammer comes up, it smacks the back of that firing pin and sets the round off. Okay, and that throws the bolt into the extraction phase. And actually, so if my finger's the hammer and it hits the firing pin, it uses, when that bolt starts to go back, it uses the firing pin to actually start recocking the hammer, and then it hits the ramp on the bolt carrier group. And so it's actually putting a lot of stress on the firing pin and actually pushing that firing pin upward a bit. And let me show you what that actually does. I'm going to roll in my my Victorinox Pioneer here and use the tool to take out this retaining pin. Okay, let me show you what this does. What it does is, over time, you're going to actually start smacking that firing pin, or that the firing pin actually comes up and starts smacking into the retaining pin, and you can see kind of what that does to the retaining pin. It actually starts to bend and deform that firing pin, just like that. Okay, so when it starts doing that, and that's because the bolt, or that's because the firing pin is being used to recock that hammer. Why they do this, I have no idea. I have no idea why they uncover that firing pin. But as you can see on the Smith & Wesson, it's fully shrouded, and so it's not the firing pin that's used to recock the hammer. It's the bolt carrier group itself. Okay, and that's one of my biggest turnoffs with the older Bushmaster bolts. Okay, and I don't know if there's other companies that do that. I'm not quite sure. Feel free to roll into the comments and tell me what other companies do what. Okay, for those of you that own AR-15s out there. So, okay, now let's talk about the manufacturing process themselves. Okay, one of the things that's interesting with Smith & Wesson, and another reason why I went with Smith & Wesson originally, was that they do what's called a high pressure test on their bolts. Okay, and they do this on their bolt and they do this on their barrels. And what it is it's kind of like they use what's called a proof load or proof firing. And essentially what it is a test to test the bolt and the barrel. They subject it to high pressures that could potentially cause failure of the bolt. Alright? And if the bolt passes that test, then what they do is they go through and they magnetically particle inspect every single one of their bolts. So this has been high pressure tested, this bolt, and it's been magnetically particle inspected. And what that does is, after the high pressure test that could actually physically damage the bolt, they magnetically particle inspect it to make sure there's no fatigue or surface cracks or anything like that that could actually cause that bolt to wear and fatigue. And so every single one of the bolts that leave the factory has been high pressure tested and magnetically particle inspected. Okay, they do. I know that Continental Machine that makes Stag Arms, I know that they do, and I know that the Bushmaster just does these tests in batches. So you don't know if your bolt has actually been high pressure tested and magnetically particle inspected or not. Okay, so but your higher end companies like Daniel Defense, Noveske, LMT, Colt, all these other ones, they all do their high pressure testing and they do the magnetic particle inspection. Another thing that they do is they do what's called shot peening on the bolt. And what this is they take shot, whether it's ceramic shot, glass shot, or metal shot, and they actually shoot it against, it's almost like sandblasting. They shoot it against the surface of the bolt. And what it does is it actually changes the molecular structure of the surface of that metal, and it makes it more resistant to it makes it more tensile. more strengthened, and so it gives it more resistance to fatigue over time. And so each one of Smith & Wesson's bolts has been shot peened. Okay, and you know, blacksmiths used to do this back in the day. They used to peen like leaf springs and things like that to increase the longevity of the springs, and it sometimes increase the lifespan of the spring by 1,000 times. So peening has been is an old technique that's been around for a long time, and you can Google that, shot peening. Okay. All right, what else? One of the things that Smith & Wesson has over these other ones, and I don't want this to turn into a Smith & Wesson versus everything else type thing. This is just, I'm just using the examples that I have here with me. Is that on the Extractor, okay? And here's the Extractor right here. You can see it right here, okay? They have what's called the black Extractor, and what the black Extractor is it's a 5-coiled spring that is firmer than the blue Extractor, which is what Bushmaster and Stag uses. A couple other ones use it, like Rock River, and a couple other companies do as well. And the blue Extractor is a 4-coil spring and is not as firm of a spring. And why that becomes important, especially with these lightweight bolts, is that they're going to come out of the chamber faster because they're lightweight. They're going to shoot into the extraction or recoil phase much quicker, and they're going to have a propensity for that Extractor to jump the rim of the case. Okay, and so having a heavier Extractor on this, or a heavier Extractor spring, is going to keep that Extractor more firmly planted on the rim of the case and keep it from failing to extract from the chamber. Okay. Excuse me. So now that's something that you can remedy. You can actually buy a black Extractor spring and put it in anything you want. So it's not something that can't be fixed, but it's something that doesn't come that way from the factory. Just a couple other thoughts on the mass of the bolt carrier group, okay, and why it's important. When most of your I'd say probably a majority of your AR-15s sold now are in the carbine length gas system. And why the carbine length gas system is a bit of an issue in terms of long-term reliability and use of the rifle is that the closer the port in the barrel is to the chamber, the higher pressures that are going to be released into the gas tube and back into the action. Especially in a direct impingement. This is talking direct impingement versus piston. But having a bolt carrier group that is a bit meatier or has a bit more mass will keep those gases from really accelerating the bolt excessively. And so, you know, these two bolts here are out of a carbine length, are out of carbine length Bushmasters. And if you can tell the difference here, we have mass that is being taken off of this bolt from here and from the back, okay? And so this is actually, and you can really tell the difference. It's about an ounce, probably 2 ounces worth of steel that they've taken off of this bolt. So you can tell the difference, and this is going to accelerate more. It's going to actually contribute more to recoil and more internal wear over the heavier bolts. So guys, this is just a couple things to think about when you're going to purchase your AR-15 and getting the right bolt carrier group for it. So anyway, take it as you will. Feel free to roll in any comments you have. Tell me if I got anything messed up. And kind of give me an idea of what kind of bolt carrier groups you guys have in your rifles. Feel free to post video responses. I want to see if you post a video response, show us your bolt carrier group and what it came out of, so we have a better idea of kind of what to expect from these different manufacturers. So, all right, guys, that's been a little video on some bolt carrier groups. Hopefully, you found it helpful. All right, we'll talk to you later. See ya.